All right, state ready?
Yes, sir.
Defense ready? Is the defense ready? All right, bring them in. Who's the state's next witness?
Tyler Burnell.
Y'all got him? Okay. All right, state may call its next witness.
State calls investigator Tyler Burnell.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, ma'am. You understand that you're under oath, your answers to be sworn answers under penalty of perjury?
Yes, sir.
All right, you may proceed.
sir.
You would introduce yourself to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury.
My name's Tyler Burnell.
And Tyler, where are you employed?
I work for the Rankin County Sheriff's Office.
And what is your role at the Rankin County Sheriff's Department?
I'm an investigator in the Criminal Investigative Division.
And tell us what that means.
Essentially, our division responds to incidents. We investigate calls for service, initial reports that are taken by the patrol division, or walk-in reports that are made whenever citizens come into the sheriff's office to report criminal activity, fraud, theft, things along those lines.
How long have you been in law enforcement?
14 and a half years.
And has all that been spent at the Rankin County Sheriff's Department?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
Tell us about where all you've been.
So I started off at the Madison Police Department in 2010. After that, I worked for the Madison County Sheriff's Office, the Pearl Police Department. I was an investigator in Pearl. Went to Flowood. Not long after that, was a detective over there. Started in internal affairs over there, and I went to go work for the Mississippi Attorney General's Office in the Public Integrity Division, and did some good work there. And not long ago, the sheriff and the undersheriff asked if I would be willing to come to the sheriff's office and kind of bolster that particular division, that particular program here. And so I'd maintain a criminal caseload and a compliance caseload.
I want to take a step back. Can you tell the ladies and gentlemen kind of what training is required to become a law enforcement officer first?
Well, you have to complete the basic police officers course. There are multiple taught in the state of Mississippi. You can go through the Tupelo Police Academy. They have their own. The Jackson Police Academy has their own. The Southern Regional Public Safety Institute, which is the one that I went to, was at one point in time combined with the Harrison County Law Enforcement Training Academy because it had essentially been demolished during Katrina. And so it was relocated to Camp Shelby, Mississippi. And Harrison County has since kind of restarted their own. You can go to the Mississippi Law Enforcement Training Academy right over here in Pearl. And then, of course, there's the Mississippi Highway Patrol Academy. They kind of put on their own, but it's a state-accredited course that if a trooper decides that he no longer wishes to be a member of the Highway Patrol, he can always use that as a lateral into a sheriff's office, police department, another state agency.
And particularly, I'm interested in what you did. So you told us that you went to which academy?
Yes, ma'am. So I started off at the Southern Regional Public Safety Institute. Like I said, I've had a lot of training over the years. Initially, I had a lot of training related to the patrol side of law enforcement, so to speak. You know, uniformed officers riding around in a marked patrol car, patrolling neighborhoods, enforcing traffic laws and things along those lines. A lot of that particular type of training was impaired driving enforcement, counter drug related stuff, some drug investigations as far as trafficking and things along those lines. The most recently, I guess more recently, I had some internal affairs training. I'm a certified polygraph examiner with the state of Mississippi. I'm a certified criminal investigator. The state of Mississippi actually has a program that criminal investigators can go through. It's taught out at the Mississippi Law Enforcement Training Academy in Pearl. And it's essentially I think it's 320 classroom hours, and then there is the difference, I think, is 80 hours of hands-on instruction. Essentially, you're kind of going out and you're taking latent fingerprints off objects, and you're rolling car tires to get tire impressions. You're taking dental stone, and you're taking all of the investigative resources that you need to in order to take tire wear impressions and footwear impressions. You're doing digital evidence extractions from phones, and you're going through your draft and search warrants. You're learning about death investigations. You're learning about kind of what particular changes that the body goes through as we pass away, and you're going through different things that you can look for in order to determine, okay, we have a crime here, or we don't have a crime here, and so that was definitely one course that I've been through here lately, but I've had some other training, counterterrorism and SWAT, special response team stuff, and tactics and things along those lines. But that's, in a nutshell, that's generally it.
In the training that you've had and in your 14 years in law enforcement experience, have you had the opportunity to investigate or be on the scene of murders?
Yes, ma'am.
And was that prior to March 19th of 2024?
Correct.
I want to ask you specifically about the Rankin County Sheriff's Department. So we heard from Deputy Lewis earlier about the fact that he wears a body cam when he's dealing with the public.
Correct.
What is the policy for investigators and body cams back in March of 24?
The investigators in my division did not have body cameras in March of 2024.
What about as we sit here today? Do y'all have them now?
We are starting to trickle them in, and by trickle, what I mean is that the criminal investigators that I work alongside with, and I guess I should try and explain this. So the criminal investigator division not only houses the criminal investigators, people that investigate, the theft and the violent crimes and the fraud and all those things, but it also houses our drug investigators. We have prescription fraud investigators that essentially work on pharmaceutical diversion, investigators that investigate street drug related crimes, the sale of fentanyl and the sale of marijuana and the sale of methamphetamines and things along those lines. But we also have our interdiction investigators, guys that are essentially working on drug trafficking organizations and things like that. So those narcotics investigators is kind of the loose term for those different identities of investigators. Those have their body cameras they all have them now. So before, the street drug investigators and the pharmaceutical diversion investigators did not have them. They do now. And so our interdiction guys have them, the narcotics guys have them, but we are still kind of acquiring them piece by piece as we are able, as the sheriff's office is able to obtain the resources either through budget appropriation or grant funding in order to continue to buy body cameras for our division.
Investigator Brunell, I want to take you back to March the 19th of 2024. Were you, in fact, working at the Sheriff's Department at that time?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you tell the ladies and gentlemen if you worked a call at 214 Ashton Way that day?
Yes, ma'am.
Walk us through your first involvement with that call that was made out to 911.
So we were going back to that date. We were actually in trial that week, working on another case. with I believe it was Mr. Smith was involved in that one as well. But I had left the courthouse, went to my office, and essentially obtained my belongings, which is essentially just a backpack that I towed all my stuff in. But acquired that, got in my vehicle, and started heading to my residence. And my police radio is on, and the volume up, and I overhear our 911 dispatcher asking that that the units that work the north end of our county, which is essentially like anything north of I-20 or Highway 80, asking for the north units to be en route to 214 Ashton Way. And this was a female dispatcher, that a disturbance had taken place and there was a possible shooting involved. So, of course, knowing that our division will eventually be involved in that particular incident, I activated my emergency equipment and drove to the scene, and was the first investigator there. And basically, once I got there, I noticed that deputies Hunter Lewis and Dustin Smith had already arrived. They're assigned to the patrol division, and medical personnel had also arrived on scene already.
And the medical personnel, is that separate from the sheriff's department?
That's correct. So in the county, especially around the reservoir area, we tap into the fire protection for the cities very, very minutely, but we also have the reservoir fire department, which responds to a lot of the fire and emergency related medical incidents in the unincorporated part of the county.
On this particular day, what information had you been provided kind of before you walk into, because we've actually seen some body cam footage where you walk up to the scene. At that point, what did you know had happened?
So I walk up to the scene. Pafford is loading a white male who was later identified as Heath Smiley. Our dispatcher had stated that his daughter had shot him, killed his wife, and then fled, which is the radio traffic that I'm hearing on the radio prior to getting to the scene. And so I have real general information and not really specific details. So I go to Deputy Lewis, I go to Hunter, and simply ask him what he's got. And then he begins to fill me in on the specific details related to kind of why we're there, what has transpired, what information he's been able to get from Mr. Smiley, anything along those lines.
Do you recall around what time you got the call or that you went out to the house?
It was shortly after 5 o'clock, 5:06, 5:07, somewhere around in there.
Nighttime?
Yes, ma'am. Afternoon, right. I'm sorry.
When you arrived on the scene, where was Carly Gregg?
She was not there.
Did law enforcement know where she was at that time?
No, ma'am.
When you go into the house, kind of walk us through what you're doing and what you're assessing at that time.
So and this will be kind of hitting the fast forward button a little bit. So there are a couple of things that transpire after I make contact with Hunter. I provide him some information in order to get an incident log started, a crime scene log, crime scene integrity sheet, what have you, and essentially get my camera. And then our investigators I can hear them on the radio coming en route, so to speak, and basically informing our dispatcher that they're en route to the scene. And as that is beginning to happen, I simply take my camera, get some gloves, and because the gloves are, regardless of whether or not people think about it, gloves are they're important. They're a big thing when it comes to crime scenes. We have touch DNA in our skin. Believe it or not, we skin cells come off of our hands, regardless of whether or not we know it, and we leave those, we transfer those on different surfaces and things along those lines. And so gloves are an important thing when it comes to crime scenes. And so I obtained a pair of gloves, got my camera, and then essentially begin to try and photograph the residence. Start on the outside, and then work from the outside in. And basically, we're just trying to document and preserve the house the way it is, as we find it, so to speak.
Investigator Burnell, I want to take a step back. You mentioned something about setting up a crime scene log. Can you explain to the ladies and gentlemen what that means and why that's important?
So when I got there, the Deputy Lewis had facilitated the putting up of the tape, the cliche, the crime scene tape that that most people see on television and stuff like that. Well, what you may not see is a crime scene log. So it's essentially a document, a landscaped piece of paper that's got a bunch of lines on it. It's got a name, a place for an agency, the time in, time out, and purpose for scene on some of them. It's essentially to document the comings and goings of everybody on that particular scene, whether or not you're a law enforcement officer, you're a coroner, you are a medical member of the medical personnel, whether or not you're fire, paramedic, so on and so forth.
During the time that you have a crime scene taped off and you're doing this log, is anyone other than first responders and law enforcement, and I'm including the coroner in that, allowed in that crime scene?
No, ma'am.
I want to talk to you. You talked about gloves, and I know that when we watched that video, Deputy Lewis did not have gloves on
Correct.
when he first went to the house. I mean, y'all don't drive around in your patrol car with gloves on, right?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
And so when you were on patrol, I mean, initially when you come out to a shooting call, what is your main goal at that point?
Irrespective of any type of call, our first priority when it comes to law enforcement is the preservation of life. If I leave today and God forbid come upon some scene or something like that where somebody is in dire need of emergency medical help, I'm not going back to get my gloves. You begin to administer first aid regardless of that, and then we'll deal with the consequences and repercussions after the fact. We have to be able to preserve life. That is our number one priority, and then everything else falls secondary and tertiary and so on and so forth to that.
I want to talk a little bit more in a minute about your processing of the scene, but I also want to talk about, I mean, when you arrived there, what did you learn? You said you later learned that Heath Smiley was the man on the front porch.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
What was his condition?
He had sustained a single gunshot wound, I believe. So it would be his right and our left shoulder had a through and through gunshot wound to the left upper torso. I guess we can say it that way.
And what about was there someone else in the home when you went there?
There were no other living people inside the home whenever I got there. The body of Ashley Smiley was found in a room that was later determined to be controlled and normally occupied by Carly Gregg.
In the course of your investigation, did you prepare a layout of the Smiley household?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Mayor Pro Tem Swinton. I've handed you a piece of paper. Could you take a look at that and tell me what that is?
So it's a very general, non-scale layout of the Smiley home, Smiley residence at 214 Ashton Way.
And is this a document that you prepared?
Correct.
And what were you using this document for?
Essentially, we were using it for courtroom purposes. I mean, at the end of the day, I know what the house looks like. You all don't know what the house looks like. You're not there. I can give you pictures of the best pictures in the world of a crime scene, but at the end of the day, if you can't look at it visually and kind of see how I move from room to room taking those photographs and essentially kind of see the layout of the home, whenever you're hearing 911 calls, or you're hearing us talk about different things on the scene, or you're hearing us discuss search warrants or something like that during the testimony phase, where you won't really be able to know where we are, or where my mind is as I recollect that.
And is that a true and accurate copy of the layout that you prepared in this case?
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Your Honor,
ma'am.
we'd ask that this be marked as state's next exhibit. I believe it's 11.
Any objection?
No objection.
Be admitted as 11 all purposes.
Investigator Brunel, you talked about that you go through, and your initial thing that you do on the scene, besides of course assessing where the two people are, is taking photographs, documenting that evidence.
Yes, ma'am.
You said you documented the outside of the home.
Correct.
Did you also document any telephones in that house?
Yes, ma'am.
Tell us about that.
So, essentially when I finish taking my exterior pictures, move up to the threshold of the house, which I'm gonna see if I can spin around a little bit. So, essentially, I'm finishing up. This is north. This is generally going to be east. That's generally west, and of course, this is generally south. So we get to the threshold of the house, and essentially start taking pictures in almost a 360 pattern. Okay, so we're going to take as many photographs overlapping each frame as we go, and until we cover all of this room. Go inside, close the door, and then grab the area that we couldn't get because the door's open, of course, and then we're going to photograph all of that too. That's kind of systematically going through and trying to clear or document or photograph each room in the house.
I want to, may I approach the witness room?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I painted you 2 photos.
Yes,
Could
ma'am.
you identify, or could you look at those and tell me what's in those photographs?
So, essentially, your first shot as an investigator when you get on scene needs to be of the front of the house. We typically like to have the mailbox in it, or at least some markings on the front of the house. That way it's readily identifiable as, well, this was 214 Ashton Way, and not 215, 213, 221, or anything along those lines. I know that all these photographs are from 214 Ashton Way, from this photograph until the last one. So the next photograph, whenever we entered in through that threshold I told you about a second ago from the living room, there is a let's call it a small entertainment center. It's about knee high. It's wooden. It's about the same color as this banister in front of you all, and it essentially has 2 phones on it. So this black phone and this white phone. So the white phone was later determined to be the property of Ashley Smiley. And the black phone over here on the left was later determined to be the phone of belonging to Carly Gregg.
Investigator Brunel, do those appear to be true and accurate copies of 2 of the photographs that you took on that day?
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, we'd ask that these be moved into evidence as the state's next exhibit.
Any objection?
No objection.
Right. Front of the house will be marked as 12. The other one will be marked as 13.
Permission to approach the witness room?
Yes, ma'am.
If you would take a look at those and just let me know when you finish looking at them.
Okay, ma'am.
Did those appear to also be a true and accurate copy of some of the pictures that you took from the crime scene that day?
Yes, ma'am.
Are those particular pictures, I'm not asking you to describe them to the jury yet, but
Yes, ma'am.
could you tell me generally what are those photographs? What
So
are they
the
of?
so the first one on top is a nylon single strap retention holster that was located on the bed in the master bedroom, which is believed to have been occupied and controlled by Heath Smiley and Ashley Smiley. The second photograph is the countertop in the kitchen of the residence that basically depicts some clothing, a scarf, and a winter wear jacket, a .357 silver revolver handgun, and then that is I guess a large scale, a wide frame photo. And then the next one is a medium frame photo showing the same handgun. And then the next photograph is a serial number image of the same handgun I just described to you. Now you can see it's a Taurus .357 Magnum handgun revolver. The last photograph are 6 cartridges and 1 live .38 special round that were recovered from that particular silver revolver.
Those are photographs that were taken from the scene on March the 19th, 2024?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that
Yes,
a
ma'am.
true and accurate copy of those photographs?
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, we'd ask that those be marked as State's next exhibit.
Any objection?
No objection.
First one with the holster will be S14. Second one, medium frame, will be S15. And the serial number will be S16. You need me to try this out, Molly?
Serial number 16.
No, is there one more? 2 more? Those will be marked S17, S18. All right, you may proceed.
Investigator Burnell, as you were making your way through the house, were there, other than the murder weapon, were there other guns that you documented within the Smiley residence?
Yes, ma'am.
And where were they located?
They were in the master bedroom, master closet.
Permission to approach to return? You'll just take a look at those for me.
Yes, ma'am. Okay.
Detective Burnell, do those appear to be or what generally are those in those photographs?
The first 2 photographs, one is a close-up image of a pump master, a 760 pump master. It looks like a pellet rifle or a BB gun. The third photograph is a camouflage shotgun, and then the last photograph is an AR-style platformed rifle.
Are those true and accurate copies of photographs that you took from the crime scene?
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, we'd ask that those be marked as a composite exhibit, just with the other guns located in the house.
Any objection?
Just clarification, you said there's 3 photos, you can't be 4.
Yeah, there's 4 photographs. 3 different guns, but 4 photographs.
Any objection to any of the 4 photos?
No objection, Your Honor.
All right, they'll be admitted S19, S20, S21, and S22.
Investigator Burnell, did you also photograph inside the bedroom of Heath and Ashley Smiley?
Yes, ma'am.
Was there a desk located in that room?
Yes, ma'am.
Permission to approach witness, Your Honor. I've handed you 2 photographs. If you would look at those for me.
Yes, ma'am.
If you could generally tell me what those photographs are.
So the first photograph is of the desk at a wide angle. It shows 2 computers. Looks like some sort of a knitting bag or something along those lines. In the chair behind the knitting, or in between the chair back and the knitting bag, are some boxes that are revealed in the next photograph, which are some essentially they appear to be THC boxes, empty boxes for THC vape pens. And then there is a like a Leatherman multi-tool.
And how many of the vape pen boxes are there?
There are 4. I'm sorry.
Your Honor, we'd ask that those be marked as the state's next exhibit.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
I'll be admitted all purposes. That's next in number. Was that next thing? All right, you can proceed.
Mr. Burnell, looking at the layout, and I apologize, I don't have that exhibit number that you prepared. There's a dining room and sort of a kitchen area that are open, is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Were there any doors that lead to the outside near the dining area?
Yes, ma'am. So there is, generally speaking, there is almost like a shotgun style door from the front door through to the door that in the dining area that led to the backyard of the residence.
And did you also take pictures of that doorway?
Yes, ma'am.
Permission to approach witness, Your Honor.
Yes, ma'am.
Man, it doesn't matter if housekeeping to you when you're trying to keep these in order. Okay.
I handed you 2 photographs, Investigator Burnell. If you could take a look at those for me, please.
Okay.
Could you tell me what's reflected in that first picture?
So the first photograph is essentially it depicts the dining area table where the Smileys and Miss Gregg may have eaten a meal. In the corner of that room, there is a black dog kennel. I'm assuming for the 2 golden retrievers that they had. And there's a white cord hanging down from the wall near the corner of the room. The second photograph is of the back door itself, and it's essentially just the back door.
And where does that back door lead?
Into the backyard, which kind of encompasses the house itself. Makes kind of an L shape, as you can see via the scale drawing, so it makes an L shape, and so the backyard simply makes the corresponding L.
Are those true and accurate copies of some of the photographs that you took from the crime scene on March the 19th, 2024?
Yes, ma'am.
Now we'd ask that those be marked as the state's next exhibits.
Any objection?
No objection.
The one described as the dining table will be S25. And the one described as the photo of the door will be S26.
Mr. Now, before we move on to any other pictures, I want to ask you about that S25,
Okay.
The cord that's hanging from there.
Yes, ma'am.
In processing the crime scene, did you have any idea what that cord went to?
I did not. It's a USB-C cable. From my recollection, I didn't know exactly what it went to at the time. We hypothesized that it was part of some home surveillance system.
As you sit here today, do you know what was plugged into that cord?
Yes, ma'am.
And what was that?
It was a WISE home surveillance system camera. that was recovered after the 19th.
Okay, thank you. Did you also photograph throughout the home the laundry room area?
Yes, ma'am.
Permission to approach the witness, Your Honor? I handed you actually a stack of photos. If you want to take a look at those, please.
Yes, ma'am. Okay.
Do those appear to be true and accurate copies of some of the photographs that you took from the crime scene on March the 19th, 2024?
Yes, ma'am.
And that's up the laundry room area?
So the initial photograph on top is kind of like a transitional photograph from the kitchen area into that laundry room, but yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, we'd ask that those be marked as state's next exhibits.
No objection.
They'll be moved in next to number. How many do we have? You just tell me what they marked. Tell me what you marked. Those will be marked S27 through S34.
I want to come back to those, Investigator Bernal, but I
Yes,
want to
ma'am.
get through some of the other photographs that you took.
Okay.
Did you also go into the defendant's bedroom and photograph the deceased victim, Ashley Smiley?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner President. You want to take a look at those photographs?
Yes, ma'am. Okay.
Do they appear to be accurate copies of some of the photographs that you took from the crime scene on March the 19th, 2024?
Yes, ma'am.
And those are of the defendant, the transition into the bedroom, and then of the deceased victim, Ashley Smiley.
That's correct.
Now, we'd ask that those be marked state's next exhibit.
No objection. No objection, Your Honor.
Mark them numerically, sequentially, and give me the numbers. They'll be admitted 35 through 37.
May I proceed, Your Honor? Investigator Bernal, so again, what is the reason for documenting the crime scene?
Essentially, so that way we can preserve the way it was whenever we arrived on scene. The photographs and the body worn camera recordings are a great way to do that.
Do things get moved once you start processing the scene?
Of course. For instance, in this case, initially, so when, as I said before, like the preservation of life is our first responsibility. In preparing for this trial today, this week, I had the occasion to look at body-worn camera video evidence. When Deputy Lewis goes into the house to check on the victim, he tries to see if there are any signs of life. He's touching her arms and he's lifting up the towel that was placed upon her head. And he's essentially trying to see if there's any way to save this young lady. And of course, then right after him, the fire department comes in, does essentially the same thing. They're placing leads to see if there's any heart rate activity, and so they're moving her arms from the position in which they were placed on her torso. They're lifting up the towel that was placed on her head that would have been replaced by Deputy Lewis. And so there are things getting moved around, and so taking the photographs and trying to preserve the way that the crime scene was at that time is a very important and a very vital function of crime scene processing. The other aspect is, so during active scenes like that, where you essentially have some like a quasi-active shooter type situation, you are in a situation where you don't know where the suspect is. They're not readily apparent. They're hiding in the linen closet. Did they pull down the attic ladder and they're hiding upstairs? Like, are they hiding under a bed or something like that? So when officers are going through systematically trying to clear and make sure that we're not walking into an ambush or walking into a situation where now we are about to sustain more casualties as a result of this one defendant, things get moved. We have had situations in previous cases where shell casings have been in the roadway after drive-by shootings. Well, cars don't stop just because there's shell casings in the roadway. They get run over all the time. So recording those with photographs and body-worn camera videos and things along those lines is a lot of times our best way to preserve kind of how they were prior to those disturbances.
May I approach the witness stand? Is it all right if I question from here for a while? I want to point you to, or I'll just look at the exhibits and then I'll ask Mr. Burnell about them, Investigator Burnell. I'm looking at exhibit 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, and 34. Investigator Burnell, it appears that you're taking photographs of the wall, the sheetrock in the wall, as well as the door leading into the garage. Can you tell the ladies and gentlemen why you thought it was important to document that?
So, leading the transition from the kitchen into the laundry room area right here, or the mud room and laundry room type of situation in this house, you can clearly see a dot in the middle of the doorway there, which is of course the door's open. So there's clearly a defect in that wall. It's not how it came from the manufacturer. Something made that defect, and so as we continue into that room. So this is a more medium scale drawing, a more medium scale photograph where you can actually see the dot, the defect, a little bit more defined. And so, skipping ahead a little bit, so number 33 is actually an up-close image of what that defect looks like. And you'll see, let me go back wide, so you'll see the bag, okay? So there's a piece of the wall. If I just take a picture of a white wall, it's going to be very hard for you to maintain reference. So the yellow bag that's also next to this defect is in that medium scale drawing, or the medium scale photograph, and then it's in the up close photograph. That way it helps us maintain reference throughout, because we took hundreds of pictures of this house and the crime scene within, and so we can clearly see now the up close photograph of that defect in the wall. And so that's more or less kind of the reason for doing it in that fashion, is so that way we can record those defects, because at the end of the day I'm not a ballistics expert. I can only call the holes defects. I can say that they are, in a layman's terms, they are what would appear to be similar to a hole that a bullet would make if it went through a similar object. But is essentially just a defect in a wall, and that is how they are classified in my report. That is how they are classified as we process the crime scene itself.
Later in your investigation, what did you learn occurred in that laundry room? After we had the opportunity to obtain some information from Mr. Smiley,
We learned that he had come home, and of course this is kind of a culmination of things, not just the interview with him, but also the viewing of a surveillance camera that was positioned in approximately the same area as the garage door opener. When Mr. Smiley arrives home, the garage door's up, and he enters through. He enters the residence through that particular method, and so. Sorry, I'm looking for number 11. And so when he enters the residence, there it is. So he enters through this carport right here. Okay, so there's a storage room door right there, utility closet, what have you, and so he enters the laundry room right here, and then according to him, he later stated that Miss Gregg essentially lie in wait at the door, this door right here. So there's a door right here, a door that goes across into the corresponding carport, and so you essentially have Miss Gregg lie in wait here, and as soon as he comes into the mud room, shuts the door, he's immediately met with gunfire. And we would later learn through some interviews there were 3 shots fired, and then of course you can note 3 different defects. The one I just showed you a minute ago in the wall next to the yellow bag, so to speak. There's another defect. This is in the door itself. Down next to the bottom, it's a for lack of a better term, like a 4-panel door. It's got four little panels. For lack of a better term, 4 little panels. It's a metal door with essentially like a foam innard, and there is a defect down in the bottom, one of the bottom panels of the door, and then there's a defect in the wall behind the door, illustrating that the door was closed at the time that the round was fired, or that the defect was made. I'm sorry.
In processing this scene, you photographed it. Did you ever take any items into evidence?
Yes, ma'am. Multiple items of evidence. If you would like me to go into those, so we, as I was initially arriving on scene, Pafford, the ambulance service, was preparing to transport Mr. Smiley to the emergency room at Baptist Hospital. In order to evaluate the severity of the gunshot wound he had sustained in his upper torso, they essentially had removed his upper garment. He is a healthcare worker, so essentially it was a scrub top and a t-shirt and an undershirt. So they had essentially taken those off and discarded them on the front patio to the house. So essentially, you have a front patio right here, which I'm sure is depicted very well in the photographs and in the body-worn camera video. But the shirt is discarded right here by the ambulance service. That was later collected by us, as well as Mr. Smiley's bottoms once he got to the hospital. With regard to the laundry room and the carport area itself, so we were able to later find that there was a projectile. Again, I'm not a ballistics expert or anything along those lines, but a projectile that seemingly lines up with the defect that we have here on State's Exhibit 32 in the lower part of that door. Went down it struck the carport floor, went into a rolled up carpet, and then essentially came to final rest in front of a blue Chevrolet Traverse, I believe is what it was. That was essentially Ashley Smiley's primary vehicle. That particular projectile came to rest right in front of the passenger side door, approximately. The defect that I was telling you about a second ago with the yellow bag exited out that wall and then struck the cargo rack of the same SUV, essentially fragmented. Almost, and then pieces of it were recovered at the back driver's side corner of that particular vehicle. So those were 2 partial, in part or whole projectiles that we recovered.
Detective Burdell, if I may interrupt you for a moment. Did you collect those and store those pieces of evidence separately?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Permission to approach and Sean? Permission to bring the scissors too.
He's not required to open anything else. He can.
Sure, talk about what's in. Yes, sir. If you can, I've handed you one box to
Okay.
begin with.
Okay.
Without opening that, can you tell the jurors what that is?
So this is it's essentially what we would call like a bullet box, so to speak. It's a very loose general term. It's got a piece of cotton or a piece of fabric in the bottom of it to essentially keep the bullet from rubbing around and things like that. But it is marked P2 or projectile 2. It is marked with the date, and which was 3/20 of 2024, because by the time we concluded our on-scene investigation, got everything back to the sheriff's office, and started doing our crime scene, our evidence log and logging everything in, we had crossed midnight. So it's got 3/20 of 24 on it, my initials. And then our sheriff's office evidence custodian has a barcode that he prints off and affixes to every piece of evidence we have. So that way it's a scan and go type of situation where if I need to log it out, carry it to the crime lab, he can scan my name, scan the piece of evidence, and it's logged out to me, and vice versa. So when we take evidence back from the crime lab, it's scanned in and then scanned my name, and it's checked back into evidence.
Does that appear to be unaltered in any way since the time that you removed that item?
That's correct, yes ma'am.
All right, we ask that that be marked as the state's next exhibit.
Any objection?
No objection.
Add it to the court report. The state's next number be marked S38.
All right.
Permission to approach to adjourn.
Yes, ma'am.
Investigator Burnell, I've handed you another box. If you could take a look at that and see if you can identify that for me.
So this is, of course, the other one, P2. In the description on the box, it says projectile on ground, RAX 0438 front of vehicle. So this would have been the nearly intact projectile that we recovered from the front of the blue SUV that was actually Smiley's primary vehicle. So the P1, this box that I was just provided, has projectile on ground, RAX 0438 rear of vehicle. So this is the partial projectile that we recovered, the fragmented projectile that we recovered, driver's side rear corner of that same vehicle that essentially had exited through the wall next to the yellow bag, or what we believe exited through the wall next to the yellow bag.
Does that appear to be unaltered in any way from when you removed it from the scene?
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, we'd ask that that be marked as state's next exhibit.
Any objection? Be marked S39 all purposes.
Investigator Burnell, y'all also recovered the live round and the empty shell casings, and those were also boxed up and put into evidence. Is that right?
That's correct.
What about the murder weapon? Can you tell us when you walked into the house where that was located?
It was on the countertop in the kitchen, as identified in the photograph.
During your course of investigation, how did you learn that that was the gun that was used to shoot Ashley Smiley?
So when Deputy Lewis initially arrived on scene, Mr. Smiley told him that the gun she had used was on the countertop, that he had opened the cylinder. There was one live round, six empty cartridges in the cylinder.
So you were in your course of investigation, did you learn that the same gun was used to shoot Keith Smiley that was also used to kill Ashley Smiley?
That is correct. So later on in the investigation, we received a crime lab report from the Mississippi Crime Lab in Pearl, Mississippi, that identified projectiles recovered from the body of Ashley Smiley were similar in characteristic and in nature to the firearm we recovered from the countertop of the kitchen in the Smiley residence. There was also a report from the Mississippi Crime Lab in Pearl, Mississippi, that identified a DNA swabs
We're
that.
gonna make an objection.
Approach. What's the objection?
It's just we're making an objection. He's talking about documents that aren't in evidence.
Sustained.
Investigator Brunel, who relayed to law enforcement that the gun found at the home was used by Carly Smiley? Carly Gregg.
Heath Smiley told us that that's the one that she had used.
Permission to press witness, Your Honor. I've handed you a box, Investigator Brunel. Can you tell me what's located in that box?
I can tell you that without opening the box, I can tell you that it is the same box that contains the Taurus 357 Magnum revolver. This is the same serial number that is on one of the state's exhibits in this photograph. This is my handwriting, my chain of custody information, so to speak, over here on the right-hand side. This is the arrow that I drew whenever I wanted to indicate to crime lab personnel which way the barrel was pointing when they opened the box up. This is a evidence label that was affixed. This is evidence tape that we put on the box, and then this is the crime lab's own seal and barcode information. It appears to be that particular firearm.
Your Honor, we'd ask that be marked as state's next exhibit.
Any objection?
No objection, no.
Be marked as 40.
Your Honor, I'd ask that the witness be allowed to open that and inspect it and make sure that is the same firearm as well.
Okay. You have scissors?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Always getting that over. It's after lunch. Do any of the jurors need an afternoon stretch? No. Sometimes people get sleepy. If you do, just stand up for a second, okay?
Your Honor, may I remove it from the box? So this indeed is the firearm that was used, and there are seven empty cartridge holders in the cylinder, and this is the same serial number for the firearm in the photographs and depicted on the box. I removed it from the box because I just don't point firearms at people unless I know they're unloaded.
Which is also why I don't want to publish that to the jury. I don't want
Correct.
them passing it around
Correct.
while we're talking.
Correct.
But I did notice, Investigator Brunel, that you made sure you cleared it to make sure that there was nothing in that weapon.
Correct.
Before you opened that box.
Correct.
You mentioned earlier that there were projectiles found in Miss Smiley.
Correct.
Could you tell the ladies?
Firearm in the box.
Oh, yes, sir. I'm sorry.
Back on the witness stand.
Thank you. You mentioned earlier that there were projectiles recovered from Ashley Smiley's body.
Yes, ma'am.
In the course of your investigation, did you learn where those projectiles were found?
Yes, ma'am.
Permission to approach witness. I'm gonna leave them both up here.
Okay.
May we approach?
Yes, sir. Overruled at this time, but pending further objection.
Investigator Burnell, the first item I handed you that was bagged, do you have any personal knowledge through your course of this investigation what that bag was?
Oh, I'm sorry. I simply know what these items are due to the crime lab reports that we received via our results.
Yeah, we're gonna make an objection.
Sustain.
Yes, sir.
You want to mark them for ID?
Yes, I would like to have them marked for ID.
All right, mark it S41 and S42 for ID purposes only.
Investigator Burnell, you talked about there were other items of evidence. I want to talk about at some point when you arrived on the scene, the defendant was not in the home.
Correct.
While you were there and you were processing the crime scene, at some point was she taken into custody?
Yes, ma'am.
Walk us through what you learned about that and what your next steps were.
So essentially, while I was photographing doing the crime scene photography, for lack of a better term, multiple units from the sheriff's office. We have a narcotics task force with the Rankin County Sheriff's Office, Madison Police Department, Madison County Sheriff's Office, that also includes somewhat of an intelligence liaison, and so with that intelligence liaison we have access to drones and robots and other type of resources that essentially provide us remote surveillance capabilities and things along those lines. We were also in touch with the Mississippi Highway Patrol to obtain the services, or to obtain the resources related to their helicopter. Because we essentially established our inner perimeter around the crime scene. We were staging officers around the area in somewhat of a loose perimeter, so to speak, to keep Miss Gregg from getting north or south of Old Fannin Road, getting outside the Farmington subdivision, which is where 214 Ashton Way is located in Rankin County, Mississippi. But through the course of that time, one of our interdiction officers radioed in that he had obtained he had taken into custody the 14-year-old suspect in this case, and it was clarified through one of the patrol supervisors that that was the suspect we were looking for, and he confirmed that it was. She was brought to the scene where Investigator Davis took a gunshot residue kit, which is essentially like a couple of dowels in an envelope. Those dowels are used in order to collect gunshot residue. They're submitted to the Mississippi Crime Lab in order to test for the presence of someone having fired a firearm recently.
Did you actually observe Investigator Davis perform a portion of that?
A portion of it, yes, ma'am.
Permission to direct, John?
Yes, ma'am.
Investigator Burnell, are you familiar with what I've just handed you?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you have personal knowledge of what's in that envelope?
Yes, ma'am.
Could you tell me what that is?
So this is a gunshot residue kit that we issue out to our investigators. It bears Carly Gregg's name, Investigator Davis's badge number, name, our agency name, the case number, the chain of custody information, and then it has our evidence signature, our evidence thing on it. Inside of this are the little metal dowels that I was telling you about a second ago that essentially are used to rub on the skin. They're used to rub on surfaces in order to determine the presence of this gunshot residue.
Other than the markings from the Mississippi Crime Lab, does that appear to be altered in any way?
Your Honor, we're going to have to object on that if I may approve.
Yes, sir.
Investigator Burnell, what I mean is, what is that?
It's a gunshot residue kit.
And who was that gunshot residue kit performed on?
Carly Madison Gregg.
And I believe your testimony was that you observed part of that gunshot residue
Correct.
testing. Your Honor, we'd ask that this be marked as State's Exhibit next.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
Be admitted. That's 43, all purposes.
Investigator Burnell, what other testing are you aware of, or that you have personal knowledge of, that occurred on the defendant that day?
That day, the gunshot residue kit was collected from her. She was photographed after she was brought to the scene. And when I say she was photographed, head to toe, including hands, front and back. Her clothes were later taken and collected as evidence and kept.
May I approach Witness John?
Yep.
Investigator Burnell, who's in that photograph?
Carly Madison Gregg.
And is that the same Carly Madison Gregg that you observed on the scene on March the 19th, 2024?
Yes, ma'am.
That's after she'd been taken into custody?
That's correct.
Your Honor, we'd ask that that be marked as State's next exhibit.
Any objection?
No objection.
Be admitted. That's 44, all purposes.
Investigator Burnell, earlier we introduced some photographs of some vape pen boxes. Did you actually remove those items from the home as well?
Yes, ma'am.
And I think you said also along with a knife of some sort.
Correct.
Permission to approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes, ma'am.
Great.
Investigator Burnell, does that appear to be the items, including the vape pen boxes and the multi-tool or the knife that you removed from the home that day?
Yes, ma'am.
Does that appear to be altered in any way from the day that you took it?
No, ma'am.
All right, we'd ask that that be marked as State's next exhibit.
Any objection? Can be marked as 45, all purposes. Be admitted. Excuse me.
You were tasked with processing the crime scene in this case, right?
Correct. Yes, ma'am.
And when you got there, you said there was one deceased victim.
Yes, ma'am.
And I think that that is exhibit. May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes, ma'am.
Looking at exhibit 36, could you tell me if that is the position of Ashley Smiley when you found her laying in the floor dead of Carly Gregg's bedroom?
When I initially entered the room, no, ma'am. So the towel had been placed back on her face, and then for the purposes of photographing her body unobscured, because at that point in time, we weren't sure who had put the towel on her face until the investigation progressed and continued. So the towel was removed and she was photographed.
The next exhibit, number 36,
37?
37, sorry about that, 37, is that Ashley Smiley?
Yes, ma'am.
Based on your investigation and your training in crime scenes, what does it appear that has happened to Miss Smiley in that photograph?
So it appears as though she sustained 3 different gunshot wounds to the head. So these 3, these 2, one here and then another here, essentially were shot from distance. The one down here under the chin, you can see a what is referred to as a stippling on the skin, which so when I took that certified investigator's course through the state, we go into what close contact gunshot wounds looks like. In this particular case, so anything close contact is considered 36 inches and less. So here you can see the stippling in the skin just under the chin, but essentially what you have there is burnt powder. When it exits the muzzle of the firearm, it lands on the skin because it doesn't have the distance in order to spread out and burn up before it makes contact with any of the surface, and so it makes contact with the skin and essentially burns the skin.
Commissioner President Schreiner, I'd ask that these 2 photographs be published to the jury.
Yeah, I'm with the bailiff.
Ms. Harry Burnell, you discussed with us, and now the ladies and gentlemen have seen that photograph. You discussed that only one of the gunshot wounds or defects appeared to have stippling.
That's correct.
And what does that indicate to you?
So the firearm was within about 3 feet of Miss Smiley's head as she was laying prostrate on the floor, face up.
After you processed the crime scene that day, what other involvement did you have directly with this case?
So after we concluded our time on scene and we took our evidence to the sheriff's office to begin the task of logging it into evidence, photographing it prior to packaging, photographing the packaging, making sure that it was stored for later submission to the Mississippi Crime Lab, and stored for purposes of court proceedings and things along those lines. When I say we, Investigator Cotton, Zachary Cotton and I, Deputy Hunter Lewis and Deputy Dustin Smith, they were doing their initial reports for their response to the scene that day, while Investigator Cotton and I were handling the evidence packaging and things along those lines. During that particular time, we had concluded the evidence portion, and Mr. Smith had actually come over to discuss the court trial that we were actually in that week. And Investigator Smith heard a knock on our front door and went forward to see kind of what was going on, if somebody needed our assistance or kind of what was happening. And a father made him aware that his daughter had actually been there that day with Miss Gregg, and that he was bringing her forth as a witness.
At that time, did you did you participate in an interview of that child and her father?
I did, yes, ma'am.
And based off of what you learned, what did you learn from that interview?
Am I allowed to say her name or just her initials? She was identified as Brooke Wafer. She was, her father and her cousin accompanied her to the sheriff's office that day. We brought them into an interview room. She was essentially a peer and a schoolmate of Carly Gregg's. They both attended Northwest Rankin, and she essentially told us, and we were being very careful in our interviewing of her, simply until we could gain guidance the following date about whether or not we needed to obtain the services of the Child Advocacy Center. The Child Advocacy Center simply stands as a neutral party in order to forensically interview children, whether or not they are victims or witnesses that have experienced traumatic events in life. And so,
Investigator
Yes, ma'am.
Cornell, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yes, ma'am.
Are you familiar with the fact that Rankin County has a protocol in place about the age of certain witnesses?
yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
And is that why your office wanted to make sure that it was okay for the sheriff's department to, in fact, interview this child because she was 16 at the time?
Correct. So anybody 17 and under, we usually try and obtain some guidance as to whether or not CAC interview will be necessary. Considering Miss Wafer's maturity and her chronological age, we went ahead and conducted an interview with her at a later date, which was more detailed in nature. But for the purposes of the initial interview that night, she essentially stated that Miss Gregg had contacted her, said that it was an emergency, she needed to come by the house. Her father drove her to that particular location like he had done times before, and dropped her off. I believe he said it was about 5 o'clock. And so we continued interviewing her, trying to ask generalized questions. What did you do when you got there? Miss Carly Gregg met her at the front door, and essentially asked her, do dead bodies make you squeamish? And she said, no, I don't think so. And Miss Gregg proceeds to take her back to to her own bedroom, where her mother's body lie deceased at that point in time. And so she stated that during this point in time, Miss Ashley Smiley already had the towel on her face. Her arms were in a fixed position across her torso, and that Miss Gregg had a silver revolver. I believe she identified the handle as being brown instead of black, that black rubberized grip, but stated that it was a very large very large revolver type firearm. And then shortly after that, she told Miss Wafer that Miss Gregg told Miss Wafer, it's like I shot my mom 3 times, and as soon as my stepdad gets home, I got 3 shots for him. They shortly thereafter, she was asked if she wanted to wait in the backyard. She said she did. Went out the back door that was described to you a second ago, next to the dog kennel, and waited. Once Mr. Smiley arrived home, she heard 3 shots. Miss Wafer stated she heard 3 shots. Miss Gregg ran out the back door, and they both ran around that L shape of the house. There's a privacy fence around this entire backyard. So they come out this door, run around the back of the carport. There's a small shed right here in the yard. Run out this way, jump the fence, run up the driveway where we later learned that they split off. Miss Wafer went to another friend's house in the neighborhood. Miss Gregg circled back around and went to the Magnolia Point subdivision, which is an adjacent neighborhood to Farmington.
After your presence in the interview with Miss Wafer and her father that night, what was your next involvement in this case, if any?
So I believe my next involvement was on the 22nd. During that initial interview with Miss Wafer, we learned that there were some. I guess I should back up. So the 22nd, we wanted to try and get a copy of Mr. Smiley's phone. Investigator Cotton had been discussing the case with him, trying to get more information with him due to the traumatic nature of what he experienced. A lot of times in my profession, we see what we would like to call traumatic mind. People experience trauma and essentially resolve it, handle it in different ways. The point being, days after that, things begin to come clear because your mind enters a fight, flight, or freeze type of mode. And so as he began to kind of come out of that, Investigator Cotton had talked with him, talked about getting a forensic extraction of his cell phone in order to figure out whether or not there were any messages, because he had received 2 messages that day from Miss Smiley's phone that didn't seem like her. And so we wanted to obtain copies of those text messages. So on the 22nd, we found out that Mr. Smiley had obtained the camera that was within the garage. We had overlooked it during the initial processing of the scene. He had collected it for us, and I had gone by to our investigator Cotton, collected the SD card from him and provided it to me. So during the initial look at that particular memory card, found that all the videos for the 19th were missing. The file folder was in place along with all the other file folders, which aroused some alarm. And so had deputies Lewis and Hunter, they were helping us canvass the area after Mr. Smiley stated that the camera from the kitchen had been missing. So we recanvassed the neighborhood, canvassed Magnolia Point subdivision, essentially trying to locate this camera that was gone. And during that point in time, I had a memory card reader, a little box you plug in your computer and you can read the little memory sticks or the SD cards. Plugged it in, found what I found, and found the videos missing. Went back to the residence with deputies Lewis and Hunter for the purposes of having their body camera to essentially provide some accountability and some transparency to the situation. Had a conversation with Mr. Smiley about the missing videos, and learned that basically he was used to a Microsoft product and was using an Apple product in which to look at the SD card. So when he looked in order to try and preserve the videos on the SD card from the Apple product, he cut and pasted inadvertently instead of copy and paste. And so he allowed me access to his computer. I found the video files that were missing at that point in time, retrieved those, looked into the recycle bin, the trash folder, what have you, on the Apple product, and confirmed that there were no videos in that particular area, which would, illustrate to us that he may have been attempting to destroy evidence. We had a conversation with him about the need, if he obtained or if he found or if he recovered any other evidence in the house, not to touch it, not to do anything with it, to call us. We were here to help him in any way we could, and we did not want the inference to be made that he was tampering with evidence, and essentially create a problem with the prosecution of Ms. Gregg's case. And so he was very understanding of that particular point, and after we left that particular time, he was later provided that cell phone back that we obtained the extraction of, as well as that SD card after we made a copy of it along with the videos. That was my involvement on the 22nd. We would later go back and do the more detailed interview with Miss Wafer at her parents' house in the Castlewood subdivision.
I want to ask you about the conversation with Heath Smiley about
Okay.
the tampering with the physical evidence. Did you ever tell him that you were going to charge him with a crime?
No, ma'am. The inference that I wanted him to understand is that he was a victim of a crime. He, was essentially, he had just lost his wife, a stepdaughter that he had essentially spent a good deal of time with over the past several years, had essentially been fighting for in an embattled custody chancery court issue, and he essentially looked at her like a daughter. And to have this happen to him, we were very understanding in the situation that he was in, but at the same time, we don't want to create problems where there aren't any. We would much rather the victims of the complaints in these situations just leave the evidence alone, call us, hey, look, I found X, Y, and Z. Can you come pick it up, collect it? Not a problem. We'll take care of it. That essentially puts the onus on us. Not Mr. Smiley. It doesn't put it on anybody else. If the evidence is mishandled or if something happens to it, that's my fault. That's my problem. It's not on him. It can't be construed or misconstrued that he is tampering with evidence, that he's doing anything in order to hinder the prosecution of this particular case.
Investigator Burnell, I want to just pick on you a little bit.
Okay.
You're not perfect, right?
No, ma'am. The only infallible person died on a cross for us.
So you would agree with me, too, that absolutely no investigation is perfect, right?
I would agree with that, yes, ma'am.
And in fact, I think, ladies and gentlemen, have heard that while there were multiple deputies and investigators over at Mr. Smiley's residence, you did not know that there was a camera in the garage.
Correct. Completely overlooked it. Yes, ma'am.
Those sort of things can happen from time to time.
I agree. Yes, ma'am.
Does any issues with your investigation, maybe that you missed the camera at first, does anything change with regards to who the shooter was in this case?
No, ma'am.
Does it change the crimes that were committed in this case?
No, ma'am.
And based on your investigation, who in fact was the person who pulled the trigger and shot Ashley Smiley and killed her, shot her 3 times?
Carly Madison Gregg.
And who was the person that either shot Heath or at Heath 3 times?
Carly Madison Gregg.
Court's indulgence. No further questions, Your Honor.
Y'all still need the break?
Yes.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, let's go ahead and take our mid-afternoon break. If y'all would, go ahead and use the restroom. We'll take about a 15-minute break. Everyone remain seated while the jury exits. All right, the record will reflect we're outside the presence of the jury. We're going to take a recess. You're not to you're not to speak to anybody about your testimony, okay?
Yes, sir.
As a matter of fact, if you need to use the restroom, bailiff will show you back there to the back, go to the restroom, come back and sit down, okay?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right, everyone else will be in recess till 2:30. Question about the parts of the body camera. Anything that hasn't been introduced into evidence, correct? You can introduce it into evidence and then show it.
Yes, it has not been introduced. I have to lay the foundation. And everything.
That's fine. I just want to make sure nothing goes on the projector without being introduced into evidence.
Your Honor, and I know that what they're trying to play, we will have an objection to it. I don't know if you want us to go ahead and take that up.
Yeah, let's go ahead and deal with this right now. What's your objection?
Probably
can we
on the
all shut that
other
door, Michael?
Close the door. Close the door. Make sure no juror can hear.
Right, it's been brought to our attention that they're going to attempt to play a body cam video of Deputy Tony Shack. Obviously, this is not Deputy Tony Shack, and Investigator Burnell was not present during a large portion of this video. And so we don't think that he can authenticate it. We don't think it's proper, and we don't think that he should be questioned or that it should be presented to the jury through this witness.
Response.
Your Honor, he's on the video. He's already testified that he's aware of the body cams. He's looked at the body cams, and that's where we're going. If he's seen the body cams, then he can authenticate it, and then we can.
Didn't you just make the exact opposite argument about a projectile?
Yes, Your Honor. Guess what came in? The projectile.
No, the projectile's not evidence. All right, look, both y'all, stop. He can be questioned about the parts of the body camera that he's on. All right, the body camera that he's not on can't impeach him unless he testified about it. Does that make sense?
You're 100% correct.
So you got to narrow it down to the part where he's on camera. I'm assuming you're offering it for some type of impeachment.
We're not asking for impeachment purposes. We're clarification of what happened.
All right. He can testify to the objection be overruled. He can testify to the part he's on. That's where we are. Okay. Any further objection?
Your Honor, but they're intending to play the whole video to the jury.
I think I understand the court's ruling. He can testify to what he's on, and if I'm not using that, then there won't be a video. So just
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. So just ask him the question, did you see A? He says, no, I didn't see A. Then we'll deal with the body camera. Okay? All right. We ready now?
Yes. You're on the screen over there too.
Okay. It's not going on right now, correct?
It's up there. I can turn it off if you
Yeah, we
like.
don't need it until.
Just minimize it.
Yes, sir. I'll just turn the screen off for now.
All right. All right, stay ready.
Yes, sir.
Defense ready.
We are, Your Honor.
Bring them in.
Hey, police court?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, Officer Burdell, what was your role on March 19th when you showed up at the scene? Your role, you're an investigator, correct?
Correct.
And I know you went and you explained to the jury what an investigator does. You're one of the managers. You're one of the guys in charge of the scene, and you're telling the other individuals what they need to be doing. Would that be a correct assessment?
That's a fair assessment. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And if I remember, at the scene, and you've shaved, because in the video
Yes,
you're in a beard,
I am. Yes, sir.
and
Yes, sir.
you're also in a white shirt.
Correct. Correct.
Okay. And when you arrived at the scene, I think one of the first things that you did was, and you talked about the gloves, you told everybody they need to be gloved up.
Yes, sir.
Okay, because as you're taking command of the situation and making sure that the scene isn't contaminated, things of that nature,
Right.
correct?
Right.
The next thing I noticed you went in, and that was, you said something to the officers about clearing the house. Do you remember that?
I don't know, sir.
Okay.
I don't recall that particular portion. I do remember them going through and clearing the house, or I may have asked Deputy Lewis if they had cleared the house. I remember there's something close to that. Yes, sir.
Because in the video that we've already seen, okay, and that was the officer, I think it's Lewis, who had showed up first, and when he comes on the scene, or when you come on the scene, it shows you and you're taking the pictures, just like what you described.
Yes, sir.
You started going around the house and
Right.
taking the pictures, and then you get inside, and you made mention to the officer, had it been cleared, and then it was
Okay.
like, it may not have been cleared, but y'all need to clear it. Do
Okay.
you remember that?
I don't recall that. No, sir.
Now, it also, there was another individual that showed up, and he was in a blue shirt, okay? And I think that's Officer or Investigator Cotton.
Did he have glasses on?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And you made mention to Cotton that this was his case, and you were there
Right.
to assist him.
Correct.
Because you would not be the main investigator on this case. You're sort of an assistant investigator, is what I gather.
Correct. So on this particular night, he was the after-hours investigator on call, and so any incidents or what have you that the sheriff's office that required an investigator from the sheriff's office to respond to a scene or handle any of those kinds of things, we usually go on call about. It depends on people's vacations and time off and stuff like that, but relatively about every 9 to 11 days, we will rotate on and off that particular call schedule. This happened to be his particular night on call, so the duty as the primary investigator was his. I was simply there to, for lack of a better term, accommodate him, assist him, do whatever I could to make his job as the primary investigator just a little bit easier.
And the whole thing of you being an investigator and going to the schools and processing the scene the way you do is to make sure that you're coming up with the correct information and stuff's not getting contaminated and things of that nature, correct?
Correct. Yes, sir.
And I want to say you talked, one of the things you talked about was, I'm going to make sure. It was a journal, I guess the crime scene journal. Or what did you call it when the people coming in and out of the house? That's
It's a crime scene log.
crime scene
Yes,
log.
sir. Yes, sir. Mhm.
And in the video, it shows you, and I think it was Deputy Rayburn. You told him to start marking, who's coming in, who's coming out of the scene, things of that nature. And he had a little memo book. It looked like some sort of notebook, and he was writing down who was present, what they were doing, things of that nature. And it looked like whenever somebody was going in, he was writing it down. Would that have been his job?
I remember getting on scene and then going back to my car, and I'm recalling this not only from my report but also from Deputy Lewis's body camera. I get a crime scene log out of the back of my Expedition, and I give it to him, and that was his duty at that point in time. If he had delegated it, he did delegate it off to Deputy Rayburn. But you're correct in that I essentially gave him that responsibility.
Right. And what happens is you have a whole bunch of stuff that's going on right
Right.
now. And you're telling this person to do this.
Yes, sir.
And because I think you were doing, because you got gloved up. I mean,
Correct.
the video shows
Correct.
you getting gloved
Correct.
up, and you did that before you went in the house. So you're okay
Correct.
outside when you're taking the pictures,
Correct.
and you put the gloves on, went inside.
Yes, sir.
Were you the only person that took photos?
I believe so. Yes, sir. I think, if I recall correctly, Investigator Cotton brought his camera inside the residence, never used it, if I recall correctly. If there may have been times where we wanted to capture a particular piece of evidence using different angles of lighting, oblique lighting, so to speak. And so I may have handed the camera off to him, or Captain Fred Lovett eventually arrived on scene. I may have given it to him in order for a piece of evidence to be held under direct lighting, oblique lighting, or some other kind of a facet of lighting in order to capture it properly, so to speak. But yes, sir. My camera was the only one used, as far as I'm aware.
And what have you reviewed? Okay, I know you're not the main investigator on this case.
Yes, sir.
But and it's Cotton who is the main investigator. But when you were assisted him, did you review all the evidence also?
By review, what do you mean by that?
Well, okay. Did you? I know you met with some of the witnesses. You interviewed some of the witnesses.
Correct. Yes, sir.
The ones that you did not interview, for the most part, did you review what they said or did or anything, or did you review or did you interview all of them?
No, sir. I did not. I'm trying to recall it correctly now. After our last interview, the more specific detail interview that we did with Miss Wafer, and I may have actually notated this at the end of my report. That was essentially my last task or my last involvement, what have you, in this particular investigation. A lot of my duties were relegated to the crime scene itself, and then I did pick up some additional assistance with Investigator Cotton with regard to the interview with Brooke Wafer, the recanvassing of the neighborhood, and things like that.
And so, once you processed and this is one thing I noticed in the video, it has you talking about, I guess, where y'all are going to be taking Carly, and you said you were in contact with, I think, the county court judge, and you were waiting to get clarification of which direction she needed to go. Is that correct?
That is correct. Although when Miss Gregg committed the firearm offenses, she committed a certifying offense, their interest of justice hearing would need to be held, so that way they could essentially handle that. So the youth court, county court judge, they maintain dual duty, so to speak. So they were contacted in order to gain some guidance as to what direction we needed to go. Put her in the ADC, the Adult Detention Center, or put her in the JDC, which is the Juvenile Detention Center there in Pelahatchie.
And that's why it was those conversations that you had her brought back to the scene.
Correct.
And my understanding from looking at the videos, what you were saying is that was happening because you didn't know exactly where she needs to go, and then once you got your marching orders, then you could tell your transport officer where she needs to be taken.
Essentially, yes. So the bringing Miss Gregg back to the scene was twofold. So we were essentially, like you said, waiting on the marching orders from Judge McDaniel as to whether or not he wanted her in ADC or JDC for that night, and then also to obtain the GSR from her hands.
And in that video, it shows, I guess, them doing the gunshot residue GSR test. It actually shows it on the video. Have you viewed that video?
I have viewed. I probably have, sir. I'll be honest with you. There are probably no less than 10 body camera videos associated with this case.
Yes.
So I've watched a fair amount. So I was there for the collection for the, I guess, the end portion of the GSR kit because I actually read Miss Gregg her verbal Miranda while she was at the vehicle. That's kind of how I know that Investigator Davis collected the GSR.
Gotcha. And where did you review? I guess is it Shack, Tony Shack?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. He's one of our deputies. Yes, sir.
Yes, and he's the person that found, I guess, Carly. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes, sir.
And then he brought her back to the scene.
That is correct. Yes, sir.
Okay. And so there was a time, I guess, where, because they're all wearing the body cams, and you've seen this. If you've looked at his body cam, you see him turn his body cam off. Do you remember that?
I know that once our deputies, for instance, if our deputies are involved in a police activity, and an investigative activity or what have you, involved in some kind of law enforcement capacity or something like that, they will have them activated in order to properly, document, record how the scene is, any particular interactions they have with the public, any interactions they have with suspects and things along those lines. Of course, when they activate them, I believe the lag time is like 45 seconds or a minute where you don't have any audio, but at the end of the day, like, you still have the video, which is representative of kind of what's going on for that 1 minute. Now, once they get to, if they're going back to, for instance, if they're concluding that law enforcement activity and going back to shoot the breeze with some guys on their shift, or going to talk about the last traffic stop they made or something like that, they're no longer involved in that investigative activity, that law enforcement activities, that police activity, so they may deactivate them. And then if they're called back in, hey, look, can you come over here and hold this up, or can you perform this particular task, they may reactivate them, come back up, and then perform some task or something like that I need to have done. So there may be some on off depending on kind of what activities they're related in, what they're doing, and things like that.
Now, doesn't the Rankin County Sheriff Department have a policy that says that these body cams, as long as you're on a crime scene, are not to be turned off, correct?
I don't have the policy in front of me, so I can tell you that this. I can tell you that policy and procedure, we use that as a foundation on which to build our particular activities and what we do as law enforcement officers. Similarly to like the Bible, for instance. So like, I don't know my Bible word for word, letter for letter, but I use the moral principles and the things within it as a foundation on which to build my life. Am I perfect? No, but I use them as a foundation because essentially, like, you won't have every scenario and every type of circumstance in a policy and procedure manual. If you did, it'd be a mile tall.
Well, y'all, I mean, and it looks like y'all have, there's a policy and procedure manual that y'all come out for the years 2023 to 2024.
Okay.
And my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong,
okay,
y'all go through training every year to make sure that everything's up to date, you have a clear understanding of what you're supposed to do, and especially what you're supposed to do when you're having interaction with the public, correct?
Yes, sir. To your point, the sheriff's office, we provided like bi-space profiling and traffic stop related training to our civil rights training to our deputies this past year.
And I think what you were just saying a second ago is, I guess, real life is a little different than a manual. Is that correct? Is that's sort of what I took?
That's a loose way of putting it, but I'll follow you. Yes, sir.
Okay. But my understanding, and tell me if this is your understanding.
Okay.
If you're having direct interaction with a defendant that's in custody,
okay,
there's no reason why a body cam should be turned off, correct?
I would follow you down. Yes, sir. I would agree with that.
Now, you reviewed Stack's body cam, correct?
I don't know if I've reviewed his specifically. The one that I do remember reviewing is Deputy Lewis's.
So, a second ago when you were saying there's a whole bunch of these and you reviewed just about all these,
Yes, sir.
now you don't think you did Stack.
Well, just about all of them is not all of them. Am I correct? I mean, at the end of the day, like, I don't know if I've reviewed his. If we show the video and I've seen it, I will more than happily tell you that I have seen it. But at the end of the day, I don't know that I have seen it.
If I showed you the video, would you be able to tell us if you've seen that or not?
Probably so. But the like I said, the one that I do remember studying prior to my appearance today is Deputy Lewis's, because he was the first officer on scene. He obtained a lot of information in pursuance to the initial investigation, which I was involved in, related to why we're here.
Yes, may I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
May I please call, Your Honor?
Yes.
Okay. Now, Tyler, I know you talked to Heath Smiley. I guess you're the one who actually went to his house to retrieve the videos in this case. Is that correct?
No, sir.
It was Cotton?
Correct.
Okay, because my understanding is, and maybe there may be different times when people went to the house, so you'll have to maybe clarify that a little bit with me.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
You were testifying that you went to the house,
Yes, sir.
and at some point, you brought, it sounded like 2 other officers with
Correct.
you, so that they would have the body cam.
Correct.
And you went in and at that time you were saying the reason why you do that is so that anytime you're interacting with public, you want to protect yourself but also the public.
Correct.
And my understanding is that you were the person who, I guess, retrieved this I want to say SIM card or whatever kind.
I follow you. I believe it's like an SD card.
SD card.
Right. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. And my understanding was, okay, is what happened, the SD card was retrieved by Cotton, taken to the sheriff's department. Y'all looked at it there and found that it didn't have anything on it, and then you went back. Is that what you did?
That is exactly correct. Yes,
Okay.
sir. Yes, sir. Yes,
So
sir.
the second visit, dealing with this SD card,
Correct. Correct.
is when
Correct.
you went to the house.
That is correct. That is
Okay.
correct.
And so once and at this point, my understanding is Mr. Smiley has been cooperative with you the entire time.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
Okay. And when you go back, were you just looking for the SD card, or were you looking for other things at that time?
When I went back and talked to Mr. Smiley, essentially what I was trying to figure out was where all the videos from the 19th were, like what had happened to them. The folder, the system had created a folder for videos for the 19th, but the folder was empty. It contained nothing, and so that seemed to lead me to believe that there had been videos that had been moved, or that videos had been deleted, or something along those lines. That is the purpose in going back and talking to Mr. Smiley. During the course of that interaction with him, we figured out, like I was explaining earlier, that he essentially was not familiar with an Apple product, and that whenever he clicked on the videos or selected the videos, there's a cut, I guess an Apple product does a cut and paste and not a copy and paste like a Microsoft product does. And it seemed like a very innocent mistake or anything or something along those lines. And so we were able to recover the videos for the 19th, and then subsequently provide those. But at the end of the day, I wanted him to understand that you don't have to do anything. Like if you find a piece of evidence or you think something may be pertinent to our investigation, you don't have to do anything with it. Just let us know. We'll come collect it. We'll come do whatever we have to with it. So that way the inference isn't being made, he's destroying evidence. He's tampering with evidence. He's doing this. He's doing that. So.
And I just want to make sure for the record here, at no time was he ever like a suspect in this case at all, correct?
If he had told us that, well, yeah, I deleted those videos, or I don't know what happened to them, or something like that, yes, sir, he would have become a suspect.
Right, but at no time, he didn't do that, and then
Correct.
you found out what happened. And I
Correct.
think, so at no time is he ever a suspect.
Was he officially labeled as a suspect? No, sir. Was the purpose in having that interview with him to figure out whether or not he was one? Yes. Yes, because like I said a second ago, if we had been able to determine that he tampered with evidence or destroyed evidence, we would have a problem. That would be a significant misstep, and then he would be a suspect in this case, or he would have been an additional suspect, so to speak.
Now, and I guess I'm trying to get my mind wrapped around it.
Okay.
He called you to say, hey, I found this, correct?
No, sir. He called Investigator Cotton.
Well, when I say y'all, the sheriff department.
Okay. I'm picking up what you're putting down. Okay.
Yeah, he didn't call you. Did he ever have your number? Probably didn't. He probably had Cotton's.
I don't recall if he did. And in all honesty, Mr. Camp, I may have given him a business card or given Miss Smiley's family a business card that had my phone number on it. If they needed anything from us or anything along those lines, I may have given them a business card that had that number on it. I don't recall if he ever used it.
And so he didn't call you. He called Cotton to say, I have found. And so then y'all are like, we got to check and see why there's nothing for the 19th.
Correct.
Because there's stuff for other days.
Correct.
But the day that is important that you've been told there's videos on the 19th, there's no videos.
That's correct.
Okay. And you do realize, I know you're saying that you were polite and you didn't insinuate anything. I think the testimony is he went and got an attorney because he was so scared. Or do you still think it was just a real good conversation, or it was there was nothing bad about your interaction?
I'll be honest with you, Mr. Camp. I don't know what his interpretation was of our interaction that day. I don't know. I don't know what the. I didn't interview him or talk with him after that particular date. I don't presume to understand like why he would obtain the services of an attorney. If he felt that he was in some legal jeopardy or maybe criminally culpable for the mishandling of that camera, he was never officially charged or anything along those lines.
And you didn't do anything to lead him to believe that he's going to get in trouble for calling y'all about that drive. What did he call it? The little card, SD card.
Can you ask me your question again?
There was nothing that he would be able to infer that you told him where he would be fearful that y'all were trying to prosecute him for calling y'all to give you evidence.
I don't believe there would be anything he can infer, but like I said a second ago, I don't presume to know what Mr. Smiley was thinking or what his motivations were in obtaining the services of that attorney. It's my understanding that even after he obtained the services of an attorney, I believe he was still cooperative.
And then did you, I guess, and you sat in for he was cooperative when he came in and sat and talked with you, correct?
He did not talk to me.
You weren't present for that interview, for Smiley's interview?
No, sir. After that particular date, I never. I think I had one more interaction with Mr. Smiley whenever he signed a property release form, post forensic extraction of his phone and the return of that particular SD card. I believe that was my last interaction with Mr. Smiley.
And he said something about his driver's license, that y'all hadn't given him his driver's license back, and I don't know if you're aware of any of that
I
at all.
have no idea. No, sir. I don't know anything about that.
Now, there were some vape pen boxes
Yes,
that
sir.
were found. Did you find those?
Yes, sir. So whenever we went into the master bedroom, they were in between that knitting bag, so to speak, and the back of that chair that was at the desk.
Okay, so those are those were hidden back someplace, sort of. You said they were behind. They were like behind a chair and by a knitting bag, so they're not like out and obvious.
I mean, if you looked at the chair, you could clearly see the tops of the boxes.
And this is in the master bedroom.
Correct. Yes, sir.
Okay.
I think it's in this stack here. Yeah. So when you're looking at the knitting bag here, you can see that these are purple, maroon, orange, and like a fuchsia color. So essentially, they're right here. So in between the knitting bag and the back of that chair.
And that room is the master bedroom.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Now, you talked about some pictures of Ashley.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and I just want to make sure. You talked about that there were 3 gunshots.
Yes, sir.
And did you the night? I guess you were there on the 19th. The night of the 19th is when this happened.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You're there.
Yes, sir.
And that's when it sounded like you were saying that you had determined that there were 3 gunshots at that time. Is that correct?
No, sir. Not 3 gunshots at that particular time. On that particular evening, we could only corroborate 2. Through the course of the investigation, there were 3.
Okay. So somebody else gives you that information that there are 3. You didn't go and examine the body yourself and say there were 3 gunshots. It was, I guess, were you able to tell there were multiple that night, and then you found out subsequently there was another one? Is that sort of how it happened?
You asked me 2 different questions. Can you ask me again, and I'll answer them both.
Well, it sounded like that. The way your testimony came across to me, and it may not have been, you may not have intended this, but it sounded like that you sort of examined the body the night of the 19th, and made a determination that there were 3 gunshots.
Okay.
Now my understanding is you knew that there were 2 of them that night.
Correct.
And that they found a 3rd one later. Would that be correct?
Yes and no. So we knew there were 3 gunshots involved. After the recovery of the second camera from the kitchen, there were multiple videos from the date of March 19th, where Miss Gregg is clearly visible and depicted on that video. She walks. She exits that back door into the backyard from the kitchen area, dining area.
Is this a video that's, I don't think has been entered into evidence yet? Are you aware of if it's in evidence?
I don't have a clue, no, sir. So anyway, she exits into the backyard and then comes back in a little while later, walks in the direction of comes back in the back door, the dining room area right here, walks around down toward the master bedroom, comes back in where this camera is right here in this corner, and so it faces back this way, so it captures anybody walking past this living room wall. And so when she walks back past this way, her hands are behind her back. She's kind of peering around this I guess peninsula of a wall right here, peering around it, trying to see if there's anybody in there. And then she walks down this way, goes into her room. Well, prior to that, in the video, you can see Ashley Smiley down in this area of the house. Of course, her entrance into that room is out of frame. So you can see Carly walked down this way. Her hands are hidden behind her back. And she walks down into this room. You hear a total of 3 gunshots, or you hear 1 gunshot, who we suspect is Ashley Smiley screaming, and then you hear another gunshot, quiet, and then a 3rd gunshot. And then Miss Gregg walks back out of that area, comes and sits into the, this is probably one of the better photos, sorry. One of the better photos of it. So these chairs, there are actually 2 of these chairs posted around this corner of that bar. And so she essentially sits down in one of those chairs. Her hands are behind her because she can, I guess, knows that the camera's right there. But sets something hard in metallic, which would be similar to that, to this revolver, on the metallic.
Now,
part
Officer
of this chair
Burnell,
right here.
can you
Yes, sir.
see the revolver?
You cannot. No, you know, and I guess that's what I said. What would be similar to the sound if you set the revolver down on a hard metallic surface like this? It clangs, and then she it looks like she picks up a phone. I'm sorry.
And in fact, you never see her with a revolver at any time, correct?
That is correct. You never see her with the revolver. Her hands are always behind her back, as if she's trying to conceal something behind her back. But she, like I said, she sits down. You hear this metallic clang. She picks up the white phone that we determined was hers. This white one.
Try not to jump in, but
yeah,
I want to know about the rooms, because you said the camera faces back away from, I guess, the wing of the house where all this took place.
Okay.
And there's 3 rooms, correct?
Right, so there's a workout room, there's a guest, or I say a guest bathroom. It's a bathroom that was essentially controlled and occupied by Carly Gregg. Her toothbrush, hairbrush, things like that were all found in there. There's a linen closet, and then of course there's her room. So the camera focuses right here, and then of course catches her whenever she's using her mom's cell phone to text Mr. Heath Smiley, which we later found out through that forensic extraction I was telling you about a second ago, that sent a text message to him, which kind of was the odd text message, like, "Hey, honey, what time are you coming home?" Something like that. And those are not pet names that they used, which kind of put him on suspicion that maybe something was awry. But nevertheless, like, she sends these text messages or communicates on her mother's phone, and then picks up the item that clanged in the chair, and then she walks back into her bedroom again, or toward her bedroom again.
And so when she walks towards the bedroom, you don't know, because the camera doesn't, I guess it doesn't face towards the bedroom, so you don't know where Ashley went to, because I think on the camera it shows Ashley going in and out a couple of times. You don't know where Ashley was as far as what bedrooms, or there's even a bathroom back there. And you don't know which rooms that Carly was in, correct?
Based upon the on-scene investigation, I would deduce that Miss Smiley was in Carly's room at the time that the 3 shots were fired, based upon the defect in the wall and the fact that...
We're saying, I guess we're talking about the video. As far as from the video, we know where the incident took place eventually.
Okay, I apologize. I thought you were asking me where Miss Smiley was in reference to the gunshots. I apologize.
Yeah, but you don't know. You can't see her go into any specific room at any time, correct?
The video does not show her going into any specific room. However, the foundational evidence that we collected, either through the photographing of the scene, the identifying of defects, and things along those lines in the
and it shows room, back eventually in the bedroom.
Correct.
Now, you talk about the other picture, which was I guess the boxes that we just talked about, the little vape boxes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay,
yes, sir.
You do not see those in anybody's hands, correct?
So at a portion of the video, you can see Miss Smiley. She is essentially back in what we believe is Carly's room. She walks toward her own bedroom in the same path that Carly took, like after she brings the dogs back in the house. And she has something small in her hands, which we believe are these.
Well, that's not very
100
small. That's a big flat. There's 4 of them, right?
Right. If you stack them together and you're holding them like this, you may not be able to see it because I mean the camera's like from here to Mr. Levinson.
Okay,
I mean,
so you don't know if that's what she's even holding, correct?
correct. The only thing I'm deducing is that it's small and that you can see an object that she's toting from Carly's room. Based upon the interviews we did with Brooke Wafer, she was using THC vapes and things along those lines, and then we find empty vape pen boxes in the master bedroom of Mr. and Mrs. Smiley.
Okay, and Brooke never identifies those whatsoever.
That is correct.
Okay. May I beg the court's indulgence for just a moment? May we approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Ready, ready.
Investigator Brunel, you talked about a video. I'm going to stand over here so that I can see.
Yes, ma'am.
You talked about a video from inside the Smiley house that you've seen from March the 19th, 2024.
Yes, ma'am.
Have you had the opportunity to view? There were multiple videos from the time that Ashley Smiley and Carly got home until the videos stopped. Is that right?
That's correct.
Have you had the opportunity to review each and every one of those?
Yes, ma'am. During the initial recovery, we watched a lot of them. Yes, ma'am. Because essentially they're not time stamped or anything. They're put into a folder, and so we had to go through the folders systematically to try and watch the videos and find the time stamps and figure out kind of what was going on in the actual scene itself, to figure out kind of where we needed to be and which videos were of evidentiary value.
When you viewed the videos, is there an actual timestamp on the videos?
Correct. It's in the bottom right hand corner. Yes, ma'am.
And to your knowledge, did you watch all of the videos from when Carly Gregg and Ashley Smiley walk into the house until the video camera shuts off?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
May we approach, John?
What has been purported to be the video from the kitchen will be admitted all purposes by stipulation without objection as S46. We bring it, mark it.
Permission to publish this to the jury, Your Honor.
Yes, ma'am. can. Counsel for the defendant wants to go over there, they can
That's
too.
not work.
Oh, you have a screen. Okay, I apologize.
further questions, Your Honor.
All right. Return the exhibit to the court reporter, please. All right. You can stand down, but you're still under subpoena. You don't need to discuss your testimony with anyone. Yes, sir. While he's exiting the room, do any of the jurors need a restroom break before we have further witnesses? Anybody? All right. State may call its next witness.
State Club Investigator Zachary Cotton. Yeah, hey, you want to do that for me? Thank you.
I apologize. Everyone remain seated while the jury exits. Let's have a seat until the jury exits. Y'all just knock and let me know when you're ready. All right, for those in the audience, one of the jurors signaled that they did need a restroom break. We'll be in recess for 15 minutes. State, go on ahead and get your first witness. Get them on the front row, okay?
Yes, sir.
May I go to the restroom back here?
Yes, ma'am.